Welcome to the MindSea podcast series, Moving Digital Health. Our guest today is Daniel Baldwin, CEO of Mars VR Lab. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks for having me, Reuben.
Maybe to start off, if you could just give us a bit of background and we can go from there.
Sure. Professionally, I'm a project manager, or was, though I still rely on those skills a lot for being a CEO. I spent a lot of time in e-learning and enterprise software development before I decided to take a shot at being an entrepreneur myself. I went on a fun little adventure where I did everything from starting a retro arcade to establishing the Halifax Pinball League, which still lives, which is super fun. And along the way, I got introduced to virtual reality, and it really bit me hard. I got super intrigued by what it could be used for beyond entertainment. So my co-founder of Mars VR Lab, Sean Green, we had opened up a previous business called Halifax VR. And this was just as the HTC Vive, which was one of the first commercial headsets, were out. But there was, Metaverse that didn't exist, and virtual reality people just kind of ignored it. And I guess it was not even close to being recognized by mainstream. And we thought it'd be cool just to open up a spot and chat to people about it and offer them to try it and see what they thought. We had so many deep conversations about how it could be applied for real life challenges beyond entertainment. And just, by matter of circumstances, we introduced to some folks at the IWK that were having some challenges, and they thought VR could be an avenue to solve them, and hence Mars VR was born.
That's really cool. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about Mars VR Lab.
Sure. So we use gamification and technology to address real pediatric rehabilitation and diagnosis challenges. We're a product-based company, and we're currently working on the Mars VR XPod, which is a tool to allow clinicians to transition people into power wheelchairs. So like a power wheelchair is basically a motorized vehicle. Throw on challenge like mobility challenges for someone who may use one of these devices, and it becomes really clear and important that the training and getting patients comfortable with operating the vehicles is important. And it's hard to do that in an engaging way that. And I don't want to say fun, because I don't think there's really any fun way that you want to go out learning a power wheelchair per se, like that type of way. But you can make it more engaging, and you can make it more enlightening, and you make it more emotional, positive, and that's what we're focused on.
Amazing. So tell me about that moment when you really, like you said, like VR caught on to you, and you really felt like there's so many possibilities here. Like, what was your experience that really kind of opened your eyes to the
future? This is awesome. I love this. I was so glad you asked me this. It's funny because co-founder Sean, thanks to him, he's the one that pushed me to enjoy it. So at the time, I'd started a vintage arcade business, and I soon realized people really don't pay money to play games per se. And so when the idea of VR came up, it was sort of in that context. Oh, we should rent it out and let people experience and stuff like that. And I was very adamant of people really aren't into paying for that type of entertainment anymore. And it just seemed to have a really low ceiling to it. So on a Friday night, 1 a.m, he tricked me to go over to a friend of his house that happened to have one of the early release developer kits of a HTC Vive system. And being a good friend, Sean knows I'm a huge Trekkie, Star Wars, sci-fi, future, anything like that. Just that type of content, I love it to death. And I went over, and unbeknownst to me, they had the setup, and I jumped in and did this VR little short game or experience called Trials on Tatooine, and I basically got to be on a planet from Star Wars, watch the Millennium Falcon land, use a lightsaber, slay stormtroopers, and
Nice.
maybe even less seconds into it, my knees started to shake. And I was just like, totally, I'm in. Like, I'm like, this is not what I was expecting. And it kind of,
Yeah.
eventually, I wrote joked about like there's people that don't like VR and people that have tried it, in the sense of it's hard to actually think of what the experience is going to be like and how really immersive it is. So that night, that was it. I was like, this is ridiculous. And I've seen this with every other person we've talked with along this adventure. Every time someone puts on a headset, within 24 hours, I get an email or a message or a text this long from them with all these awesome ideas they have of, is this possible? Oh, is there this? Is there that? Could we do this? Could we do that? And it's just really inspires people when they try it, which is really fun. It makes it an easy sale. So that was the moment that really locked it in for me. And from there, the business was called Halifax. It was a numbered company, but we operated as Halifax VR. And it just reinforced that it could be a technology that could become mainstream. Like I kind of look at it like, I think it's funny, like, and I've lived this in my life, like the life cycle of the nerd, like from the 80s to say now, like if you've been alive that long, is where nerd used to be like a negative term, and it meant, you know, someone who was on a computer or used a computer in some way, right? And there's no internet. I mean, this is whatever. You were a nerd, and it was a negative thing. Eventually, you know, we get to the point where we all use the internet, we all use computers, and the thought of calling someone a nerd, because that doesn't even exist anymore, like in any way, shape, or form, almost to the point where the term nerd has like a positive connotation to it now. It's like a reward to call yourself a nerd. And I think VR is going to be one of those technologies that just slips into our lives unbeknownst and becomes a part of our everyday, how we have to live and how we want to live and how we want to do certain things. And I think that's the excitement for me, is I feel like I'm right in the middle, and I can be a pioneer and an expert in enabling this to happen for, you know, for when that moment happens, where we all have a VR set, like we all have a cell phone. Like I remember a point in time in my life where people that texted, you looked at them like, why do you have a cell phone? Like there was a phase in time there where cell phones weren't necessarily cool or like the main thing, you know, and then now all of a sudden, can you imagine life without one? Doesn't make any sense. Like, and that we're going to go through that same churn with VR.
Yeah. And so like you said, like VR has been around for a long time. What are some of the advancements and improvements in the technology that have, you know, just made it a lot better over the last few years?
I think the obvious one that you probably already could guess is just the advancement in technology means obviously things just work better, faster, lighter, smaller, that type of thing. So if you look back at, like, VR has been around probably since the 70s, 80s, but the headset was, you know, a machine you walked into that drew lines on a thing and said, like, cool. But now you can take one out of a box, almost like you would a toaster, and put it on your head and use it with no real technical background that you wouldn't already have if you're a consumer of apps or a smartphone. You know, if you've ever shopped online, you can put this on and use it. And I think that's, although we're there with it, it's not there enough that people are still that comfortable with it where they trust it just to work out of the box, right? And that's where it needs to get to integrate it into everyday life. Cool.
So what's the headset you have there?
This one here is a Oculus Quest 2, which is the newest from Meta / Facebook.
Yeah.
The one we currently use as part of the XPod product is the HTC Vive. And we use that because it offers additional things you can track and integrate into the system, and as part of the technical setup for the power wheelchair training solution is we need to be able to know the height of certain things so we can map it into the virtual world and that feels real to the client, because the crux of or the success of the XPod and any virtual reality program is it has to translate and feel like the real life counterpart experience. Like people want that realism, especially where we're trying to take skills, teach them in a virtual environment, and have them carry through so that they're then comfortable using an actual power wheelchair. So there's that sort of integration part and recreating the realism, which you need processing power to do, right? Like, so with the HTC Vive system we use for our product, we have a PC in the background running it. Whereas this, more of a commercial like entertainment device, you don't need a PC. But then, your processing power is limited to whatever size graphics card and, hard drive, and you could squeeze into this device.
Yeah, it's a one self-contained unit, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so tell me about that mapping, like from the real world to the virtual world. When you're talking about the navigating a wheelchair, I assume that there's the speed, like how the touch of the joystick, like how much acceleration that gives you. Right. And, how do you actually like translate? So like you say, it is like as close to the real thing as possible.
Very painfully. No, but honestly, it's a combination of software and hardware. So I'm just going to stick to the specific example of the XPod. Is we had to invent an input system, right, that could mimic the joystick of a power wheelchair, and it's actually a very unique joystick because there's like a dead zone. There's a spot where you push forward a bit, but then it clicks in, and then you're going to move, these type of things, right? So we have to recreate that. So we actually have, originally our prototype was a real power wheelchair arm that we fitted to an activity chair, so that the person will sit in an activity chair, which are common chairs in a rehabilitation type center. They'll sit in the chair, and as part of that chair, we have a real wheelchair arm. And there's a fabricated 3D printed device that we add on that puts a tracker on top, that then when the joystick is moved, it tracks the X, Y, and the pitch and yaw like coordinates of the controller. So that was good for regards to prototyping and proving that we could recreate and capture like the movement of a real system. Testing, as we moved on, we realized it's not good enough because we want to take direct input from a power wheelchair arm, the exact thing. So we invent is the right word, but throughout using existing things, but we produced a case to house the things that we need with a USB output that we can connect to the PC to power and capture the direct input from a real power wheelchair arm. So the fact that we have that controller built that it feels like it, and then add on the software side of physics engines, right? So with power wheelchair, there's front wheel drive, mid wheel drive, rear wheel drive. There's outdoor setting, indoor settings, terrain settings, settings for weather. So that's math, right? A layer of math on top, and then add in a lot of awesome sound can solve a lot of problems with regards to getting realism or trying to get that across. We didn't really appreciate that when we started, but went through some phases, through regular feedback and trials of, oh, wow, add gravel sound when you're going over the gravel, besides changing the physics engine and getting a different control. But make it sound like you're on gravel. And now it feels a lot more like you're on you're on gravel, almost more so than if you had the physics with it, So just a little combination and tinkering of that. Part of, I had mentioned, like Sean and I had Halifax VR. It was funny. We really kind of use that to gather research. In a way, when I look back on it, like I kind of think I'm an expert in interacting and how people react to VR, how they receive it, how it affects them, the things they like, what works, what doesn't work. Because I watched thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of adults, children, like a wide variety of different people do it, and catalog this and remembered what worked and didn't work. And it really helped us when it was like, well, how do you just create a game to teach someone to, like, where do you start? It's not like building a genuine piece of software. You're in virtual reality, so it's almost part movie because you have an entire scene and surroundings that are interactive. So I'm not like, if you're familiar with software development process, you do a spec doc, you would write endlessly to try to document how to do. So it's like, so us coming as software people, though we had the knowledge of what kids enjoy, what they liked, what worked, how do we document that so then we can give it to programmers, to develop? And what we realize is it's a blend of creating a script, like you say for like a movie or a video game, right? And mix in best practices from software development where it makes sense. And it's kind of fun. It's sort of like, hey, there's kind of like, did we just invent a new sort of like arts position, like some sort of like VR game media, but training developer? Because we got to be able to figure out like what's really fun was like, so it's like, yes, when you're teaching someone something, you obviously start with a list of what are the learning objectives, right? So then you know if you're teaching properly and if they're learning, and you can sort of check off. So our clinical partner, the IWK, they provide us, here are the training guidelines that are used now, that are sort of boiled down from two different standards. I forget the exact names that exist when you're training people to transition into a power wheelchair. So we go through that list and say, can we recreate these in VR? And how the heck are we going to do it? Right. So that the child doesn't know, because all of this training is sort of is developed on there's no negative feedback. This is not a negative experience in any way, shape, or form. There's no, you're doing it wrong, do it again. It's for the child, it's exploratory. It's like, I always say, it's like you're tricking them into learning. Like they're playing a game, but really they're learning mobility skills. They're building muscle memory, those type of things. So like one of the simple ones was like one of the criteria when they're deciding if someone is competent to drive a chair is like drive straight for 4 meters in a straight line and reverse 4 meters in a straight line. And say, okay, well, how can we how can we do that in a game sort of way that doesn't feel like you're doing a test or being taught or that you're going to fail, but that you want to do it for some other inherent reason, that because it's engaging and fun. And that's where Sean and I excel. Like I like whatever, I'm going to sound like bragging, but like we really nailed that part. So we went to the clinicians, like you go from proof of concept and we say, hey, look, this could work. And we built them a chair with a little bit of functionality to, hey, we think if we did this and designed a game that worked this way and had the person do this would encourage them to do these actions, and there's a list of, 30 different skills. And we had to go and create a game, a scenario, dialogue, characters. How's it all going to work and interact? But at the same time, provide the clinicians with the data that they need and provide the patients with the skills that they need. So that was the part that I really really enjoyed.
So maybe like describe that experience for the child, or like putting on the VR headset for the first time, and like you said, one of those first skills is just learning how to go backwards and forwards. And I know we don't really have visuals, but maybe you could describe for us, what they see and kind of what their experience is.
Absolutely. So the system is there's a kind of a little older setup here, but let's say this. This is that Rift-In activity chair, which is a common in a clinical setting. You see this kind of, I'm pointing like you can see, there we go. This kind of blue thing. This is like a 3D thing that went through many iterations where we were trying to get a tracker on top to capture the movements of the joystick. And I mentioned that now that's scrapped. It's a direct input system that's all housed together and succinct with the VR system, which is awesome. So the patient is seated there. They're given a VR headset, and then we have a character, Ada, who's sort of like their guide, who's kind of like a smart ass kind of cat-looking robot, just something quirky that interacts with you as you're going and may if needed, may interact to get you to do something that we want you to do. So they put that on, and then the clinician has an output, whether a tablet or a TV, where they can control the camera in VR. So they can either be following along by looking through the patient's eyes and seeing kind of what they're seeing. Of course, they're seeing it on a flat screen, or they can free camera, put the camera above them, behind them, beside them, and sort of watch them in there. But they also have an overlay panel that's spitting out real-time data. So one of the really neat stats that we do is around concentration, and are they looking where they're driving, and are they being distracted, and how do they deal with being distracted with driving? Because you got to learn not to be driving while you're distracted. So one of the neat things we can do is we can measure where they're looking compared to the path that they're going, and provide that in a numerical sense to a clinician that makes sense. That would be hard to observe manually, sort of like in the process that they do. So it starts out.
Sorry, just to question about that. So does the VR headset have like a sensor in it, so you know the direction that the user is looking in? Like it kind of like tracks the eye.
It knows. Yeah, it's 6D immersive, I guess. So everywhere you look, it's like you're transported into the world, no matter. So when they're in there, they never move in the real world, and then they start driving, and then it's the virtual experience of driving. But everything, and if you haven't tried VR before, it feels like you're somewhere else. It's like it felt I was in Star Wars. Like you feel like you're in another your planet. You're out of the hospital. And we have it like, again, Sean and I watched tens of thousands of hours of kids or young people in virtual reality, and we saw what made them laugh, what they like, what games they always wanted to play over and over and over, and we just extracted from that, right, to build an environment. Yeah, and then part of that, I mean, when I say we, team built so we have an awesome modeler, animator, Mitchell, who writes, like, for one character, he'll write this much backstory for the character. And it's like, why? But it defines, because you need that, because how does the character interact with the world like in this? And so, we kind of have the ideas, and then you have the right people that really like building this sort of stuff and are passionate. I mean, it's really hard not to be passionate about working on something as emotional as this, and it's important to helping children. So that's not a challenge for us to find people that are genuinely keen to help and contribute and go above and beyond with, the designs and stuff like that. So part of all that, and then we just build activities into the actual, the game. So a simple one for the driving forward and straight. So what we've done is, so when it loads up, the patient, the client knows, you can tell, you look around, you're in we call a travel pod or X pod. And the arm and the control system that's out in the real world is mapped and shown to them as a graphic, right, in the virtual world. So when they reach out to touch it, it feels like it's there, right? And it's the overlays over top, so that they're in the chair, but the arm maps to the arm, so it's replicating that system. And then what happens is, as you drive, it's really obvious that there's a meter that's decreasing as you're driving. It's just really obvious. But throughout a particular level, there are yellow lemons. And as you drive over a yellow lemon, you notice the yellow bar starts to increase. And then eventually, after playing, because it's all free, like there's no do what you want to do, you realize, why can't I move? Why can't I move? Oh, you have to drive over lemons to get energy to keep the expo. So now they have a reason to look for the lemons. So now you want them to drive in a figure eight. Well, let's put some lemons out there, but it's kind of a puzzle. And the only way you could unlock the lemons is if you drive in a particular pattern, right? Yeah. And then it's just, again, I couldn't write a book on how to do it, but in the moment we think of these things, right? This could work. This could work. Could we? How hard is that to program? Those like go through that sort of evaluation of it, and then just try it, right? And we're in the phase now where, like, we're in clinical research trials. Like, this is where we does it work? If it doesn't, we get feedback that, we have this other really fun, we think it's going to be fun, where you're kind of bowling and there's these acute, like, to you in there, like there's these robots, kind of fun, like goofy robots, but they kind of transform down into like balls, and you realize you can interact with them and push them around. And then, you look down and there's almost looks like a bowling alley down a huge canyon. And there's like a bunch of other robots and stuff. And you realize you can push the ball straight and push it over the edge and it'll go and make a huge explosion. But then you realize you're trapped and the only way to get out is you have to back up in a straight line to get out. Right? Like, and it's, that's it. Right. And you want to play bowling many times. Well, then you're going to keep reversing 4 meters, like that sort of thing. But again, it's just, like I said, I couldn't say particularly how we do it. It's just,
it's just iteration and, and trial.
And I credit a lot of it to, because when Sean and I started the other business, we were very hands-on with it because we knew that wasn't what we wanted to do. Our plan was, let's talk to people about it. Let's meet people. Let's like blow people's minds away with this type of thing, and see what comes of it. And, we talked like with a lot of the experience with Halifax VR, like is what we use to kind of find the project we wanted to work on. Like we both came, we both work professionally. We both decided we want to be entrepreneurs, and we both decided we're going to work on something that matters and it's meaningful and that you love getting up to go do, like that. Yeah. And we were stubborn and until we got what we wanted, until we got what we wanted. But we had talked to like a lot of different industries of like potential huge projects for like oil and gas and mapping and like training, that sort of thing. Yeah. But again, through Halifax VR, we met up with Dr. Jordan Shrico and occupational therapist Scott Thew from IWK, and was like, this is meaningful. This is what I want to do. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about, working in the health and wellness field is that a lot of the people you interact with and come across, generally care about people and, helping them, live healthy lives. And, that's a, really rewarding experience and generally amazing people to work with.
I agree 1,000%. Like I haven't met one person in all of my interaction with like clinical teams and stuff of people that at the base level, just we want to help people and they really mean it. I haven't met anyone that's calling it in and just doing it as a job or a career. I think it's kind of similar probably with teachers. It's like, you really got to love and have passion for that to put a career in that, because it's emotional. I can't really speak to it because I haven't done it, but part of the reason why they approached us to solve this problem is because it's so emotional challenging to do this training and the transition, not only obviously on the families and the patients and that, but the caregivers. Yeah. Like that's, like it's very emotional. It weighs very heavy on people day after day after day. And it's like, you can find a way to address a little bit of everyone's kind of emotional distress around this. But that's really good. That's really good. So,
yeah. Lots I want to dig into there, but like you said, like with the emotional aspect, like hours of training. So how long does or how many hours of training does someone usually have to do before they really are able to navigate a chair on their own?
I mean, I'm not qualified to answer that directly, right. Fair enough. But I have talked with people that do that. So just a little caveat that might be 100% accurate because I'm not a doctor. I don't have and besides working with clinical teams and enterprises, like I haven't worked in one per se, but it varies from patient to patient depending on their physical abilities. But it could take hundreds of hours.
Yeah. So
hundreds of hours of practice.
A lot of time.
Hundreds of hours, yeah. And so it's really neat. As part of this experience, we got to go and see how it's done now. And there's a building downtown. I forget which building it is in, but it recreates a lot of like it's indoors, but there's a street. There's a sidewalk that's under construction that has that gravel. One section, there's a ramp that you would see common to go on a door. There's recreations of different doors and accessibility buttons and things like that. And it's huge because they have to recreate like all this stuff. And then, they go in with people with, pens and pads and go through it. And it could take, 2 clinicians or 3 clinicians per patient sometimes, that type of thing. And the other layer to that is different people have different abilities, right? Like, so what I might do to push forward, and it might be as hard as I can push forward, is different than how you push forward. And a wheelchair has to know that you're pushing all the way forward to your ability. So there's a big process that goes through, say, from someone who is a manufacturer, provider of the equipment. There's a huge curve just to dial in the control system so that it matches the ability of the driver. So that makes it that the training wise, like that just complicates it, where you just can't use a generic system. You know what I mean? Like it's a very it's very, very, very individual, and because it has to be, there's no other way to do it. So, and what we're hoping is, or what we will be doing is, we can solve a lot of those problems. We can calibrate their real life wheelchair, but we're capturing their ability when they're using our joystick, right? It's part of the process to calibrate it for them. So if we could get our joystick to talk to their power wheelchair, we could save a month process of dialing in and figure out how to configure their real life chair for them. So just lots of little cool things like that, that sort of have been popping up of, well, wow, that we're trying to teach people how to drive a power wheelchair. There's just a lot of other like little one-offs where it's like, oh, wow, that could really help this part of the process. This could really help this part of the process that we just didn't know. And, that weren't part of the core research that we were trying to do. We're just trying to prove we could transfer skills from a virtual world to a real world, right? That's what we're trying to prove.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the clinical trial, because it's a big step from,
I just want to clarify, sorry, it's clinical research trials. There's a difference between a clinical trial and clinical research trials, where clinical trial would be next, and the research trial is a smaller sample, and it may involve. So our clinical research trials involves clinicians that are in the field. Current pediatric power wheelchair users would be the second phase, and the third phase will be new pediatric wheelchair users. So, and this whole process again is at the end of the clinical research trials, we'll be able to say, yes, it transfers skills. Yes, it seems to transfer skills. Then, like say for the research trials, we need a broader base of data to be able to say we've clinically proven that this works. Like we had a data set, right? That shows it. So I just want to throw that in, because it's important. I don't want to mislead, because it could make people think we're a little bit further, right? But that's where we are with it.
No, thank you for the distinction, because I wanted to dig into that process, because it's a big step going from that informal feedback and iteration to the clinical research trial. Maybe you could tell me more about navigating that process and exactly how the research trial is working.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have Dr. Shriko. He's our, I don't know if this is the right term, but like our main principal. So this is his project, right? He's the doctor. He's the expert in pediatrics and rehabilitation in children. He has the experience on where the gaps are and what's needed. We're the technology side that can help him, that he doesn't have inside the hospital, right? So it starts with you need the champion. You need the champion that is willing to invest the time, because this person is already a doctor, right? This is honestly, he works with us, 11 o'clock at night, Sundays, 6 a.m. He's, you know what I mean? But back to that's the type of person that works in this, you know what I mean? Because they're emotionally invested into it. So you have to have that principle. And so for us, it got to we had to get to the point where Dr. Shriko thought it would be worth to put it into a clinical setting and figure out a way to get more data to say, this, it looks like it's working, some preliminary results. So then what happens is, and I don't know, it probably changes from institution to institution, but they do a lot of research clinical trials as part of what they do with the IWK. And there's an internal process where you sort of apply for space and time to be involved. And if you get approved, then you get a research coordinator. And this is someone, usually for some reason they all seem to come from Dow. Someone come in and they'll create what is called the research protocols. So this is like their kind of like their definition doc or their design doc of how it's going to be run, how they're going to prove it's impartial and that we're not influencing the results, because it's tricky. We have we're obviously a business.
Yeah.
We're a nonprofit entity, and you have to ethically mix it so that we're not, because there's obvious things that we want results to be, right?
Yeah, obviously you want the clinical,
but we can influence it.
Well.
So one of our top priorities is we're very strict, and we're also like IWK is just a fantastic partner because their legal counsel for this project are very awesome at like of drawing the lines on what we can be involved in and see and contribute, because we obviously want to be enablers. Honestly, I'm not trying to cheat. Like we're trying to like do something that means something here. I'm not, you know what I mean? We're not trying to like back the, you know what I mean, do some scam or something like that. But we're always like, you know, well, could we help? Could we provide gift cards to help you in recruiting people, or could we, you know, these things that are just like, you know, the ruler comes out and it's just like, no. It's like, don't tarnish this.
Yeah. Don't do anything protocol that even like optically might look.
Exactly. So we decided, you know what, you're right. So we've gotten hyper vigilant about it of, you know what I mean? I don't want anyone to be able to say, you're bullshit and this doesn't work. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's not why I'm doing this. This is not why we're doing it. So you get your research coordinator, and then they with your main principal. So in this case, Dr. Strico, and they create the research protocols. How they're going to run the study? What is it going to be? What is it going to prove? What are we going to do? In our case, it was decided they wanted to. Again, we're not in clinical trials. They wanted to start with clinicians and their peers and let them try first to get their input on what they thought about it, right? So that's for us. That's our first phase. Is just clinicians that work with pediatric patients. Then we'll get around to feedback from them, and we'll jointly go through and what makes sense. You know what I mean? Some, you know, getting feedback, you just don't know what you're going to get or what makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, so we'll go through a cycle with them and come to an agreement. Yeah, we're going to do this, and then we'll make those changes. We'll release the next build for phase 2. And phase 2 would be current power wheelchair users. And then from the protocols that have been distilled, they'll get them to do certain things. And I haven't seen the research protocol because I want to see it, because I want to influence it. I'm guessing at this point, but there'll be a process to get feedback from them that will come back to us that may be, I mean, to help improve it, right? Like this didn't feel real, or that didn't feel real, or, you know, those type of things that we could take and refine the realism. Because like we said, that's the main thing. The skills got to transfer, and we know that's based on replicating the real life counterpart. So, and then when we have that feedback and we integrate that feedback, then we come back with a build that's for new. So someone who they'll be the first person that they're to try it to be trained this way and see what those results are. And that's the from a business point of view, commercial standpoint, that's the data we need. Right? Because that's when we can start saying, hey, preliminary results looking good, right? You know, that just helps you the whole way. Fundraising, setting up your sales funnel, all that sort of stuff. And that's it. And at this point, you know, we're positive, we're doing this. We have certain, you know, when you do a scientific study, you state what you expect what you expect the results to be.
Yes.
We think we know. And there's certain things like in the training protocol in the real life that we know we can't do in VR, and like one of them is so when you drive a power wheelchair, you got to be able to move your weight on your buttocks and shift your weight and certain things. Right. We can't do that. Like, yeah, they're building some sort of custom. I don't know. Like, you know, it's not feasible to do from where we're at. So it's like, well, if we can do all but one of the things, that could be good.
Still a lot.
Yeah, exactly. But again, we expect what we've done to get, but we know we're not going to bat 1,000, right? So we'll see. And they're testing, you know, what we've provided for our, we're calling it MVP, but it's more than that, because with COVID, we were supposed to start, you know, this time, and we're supposed to start here. So what we did is during the delays, we just kept moving forward and making the build even better. So instead of just testing 9 of the 25 skills, we're giving them all to you. Here, it's all flush, because we had it all scripted out, and you know they're part of that process. So, and we just provided a better a better version, right? So now our confidence is even better, or higher, that it's going to be good. So
Yeah. In addition to this project and this experience, do you have other projects on the go for other situations?
yeah, absolutely. So it's fun. The thing I've just been really working on the last 2 weeks with Daphne, who's the director of our project management office, is defining our product roadmap. Like what just high level, what has to happen, from the germination of the idea to where we think we have something that's ready to be commercialized. And one thing that we've learned is you don't make medical products by having two business people in a room throwing ideas back and forth of let's build this, let's build that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people that probably do it. Do it if that's what you want to do. That's not how you do it. You base it on research and you base it on data. And so what we have on the go now, we're working on the framework of a research project that will coordinate with Dr. Shariko, that he'll lead, that will help identify other gaps. And they may not have a virtual reality solution, but that's okay. You know what I mean? That's okay. That'd be challenges for other industries, other companies. But we know there will be some that maybe we can address with virtual reality. And it's like, well, if you're going to be using VR for power wheelchair training, you already have all the equipment that you need to do product X, or whatever the next thing is. So we have a list of eight things that we're looking at. But again, you need champions. You need, and Dr. Strico can only provide so much to us because his job is his priority, So you got to find similar people with interests that are interested in the tech that are going to carry it through commercialization, right? So, and then the other thing we have going on, which is really important to us, is this. It's called Camp Triumph. And this is a camp that was founded by Dr. Shariko. And it's a camp for able-bodied children that grow up in families with people with disabilities. And it's kind of a group of people that get forgotten about because their life is changed a lot. Because just so you say, again, a brother, a siblings type thing, it's then the family's life revolves around one person, right? That's the priority. Yeah. And this is a camp where these kids can go and escape that and enjoy a week. And it's all 100% free. So we started a fundraising project. We're going to do like a walk, like a community walk, that sort of thing. We hired a person responsible directly for organizing and planning it and executing it for us so that we can fund as many kids as possible to go to camp. So that's our second priority right now, beyond the XPod product and getting to commercialization.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's
so just to switch gears a little bit, you mentioned, Facebook and the Metaverse before. So I'm interested in, is there any tie-in to what you're doing, or do you see a future of what you're doing really connecting with that?
This is the so it's like, oh, what's the Metaverse? What's all this term? But really, it's just your gateway to the virtual world, right? It's like your Google search screen, basically. That's what it's the entry into the virtual world. So we're already building for it. We're building a training solution that someone potentially could just do from home. They go to the internet like we would do today to book our appointment to go to the IWK, but they throw on their headset, they go to their Metaverse lobby or presence, they look at what the services are available in the Metaverse. They pick power wheelchair training. Again, this is obviously not in 2 weeks, right? But say 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, they have the setup at home that they need. They put on their headset and say, if it's safe, even with this specific thing, it's like, oh, you need a particular controller to work this. It'll be shipped to you. Blah blah blah. Right? So they get their thing, they pick their services, and they do them in this virtual world. And I see like like personally for me, the metaverse is going to be live events and live sports. So again, we're a company that we all focus on entertainment. This is me, like my personal interests and
Yeah.
you know, what I want to do is there is going to be a time in my lifetime. I'm a huge Blue Jays fan. I love the Jays. I don't like sports, but I love the Jays, follow Jays, love baseball, love everything about baseball. But I'm going to be able to put this headset on, and I'm going to be able to buy my ticket to the game, and I'm going to be able to stand behind home plate of a live game and watch it. I'm going to be able to walk around the field,
best
stand behind the play, right? And I'm going to be able to say, I want it to feel like a stadium experience. And I'm just going to like buy my ticket. And I mean, commercialize this is easy. Like if you were a sports team owner, would you want the option to have 2 billion people at your game, or you want it limited to the 10,000 in the stadium, right? And then I invite you, hey, you want to watch Jay's game with me? Because you're in my friends list in my metaverse, right? You come and we decide, oh yeah, let's go to hang on the field, or no, let's pretend we're sitting in the bleachers beside each other with the real stadium sound, voice, everything's happening in real time. We're not far from that. Like, and to me, like I will spend $1,000 per game to be able to experience that. But then it's like, okay, that's easy to do, say for an entertainment. Right? You know, you get the right resolution and stuff. I'm sure it'll be bug, whatever, but it would be friggin' awesome. And it's like, well, what are other things in life that would be awesome that you didn't have to get out of the house? And I think if anything positive came of COVID, I don't even say it's positive, but something that came out of COVID is I really think it pushed and fast tracked people's willingness to live in a virtual world. And right now to them, the metaverse is Zoom and what we're doing. I think before COVID, would anyone ever record a podcast over Zoom? Ever?
I certainly
like, seriously
in my mind.
Right? No, never. But now it's just like this, right? And people are willing to do that. So it's like, what else? We're willing to order our food, you know, through Uber without seeing it, right? And places like McDonald's have bought digital land and virtual worlds, and they're setting up virtual McDonald's that you could go in and buy NFTs, but you can order food from it and it'll deliver it to you where you are in the real world. You order wherever it is without you having to pick where you are and that sort of thing. So it's like, wow, that's kind of cool. Like, you know what I mean? That's kind of neat. But what else could it be? And it's funny because Sean and I were just having a really, really good conversation about this. It's like, well, what's the holdup for healthcare then? Because we kind of noticed like trends in healthcare, like trends with technology and stuff like that. And it always seems like, besides government, we're always slow, but the healthcare seems to be a field that is really resistant to adopting new tech, right? And we were like, why is that? Like, and this is a question for us that we have to answer because we want people to have the option to have certain healthcare options from home in a virtual setting, because there are tons of them that could be done simultaneously, you know, I mean, with no, that could make could just make us progressively better. Like if we can self-serve people and that sort of thing. And it kind of came down to twofold. We're like, well, from the hospital's point of view is everyone's overworked, over emotionally worked. They're invested in it. And we've probably all experienced, like, when you know how to do something, then someone wants to get you to do it a different way, but you got 1,000 of them to do. The last thing you want to do is fall 2,000 behind to learn a new way and go to do it. You've got patience, or, you know, whatever it may be, to get. You don't, and I would say in any other industry, I would say that's a BS excuse. You know what I mean? Like, people are always resistant to technology. I worked at tons of places where people were, you know, I can't switch from Outlook to Google. to Google, like, are you crazy? Like, it's like, what? No, you're just being a jerk. You know, but in that case, I can just see that where it's like, no, because there's really effects, you know, there's really effects there in their workload, which is effects on real humans, like, and the health of humans. And I think from the consumer side to me, healthcare is a very personal thing. It's a very intimate thing. Like, you got to trust the practitioner. Like, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of stuff. And would an everyday person trust that a virtual visit or diagnosis is as good as an in-person one? When we all know that an eyewitness compared to a camera, the camera is way more reliable and consistent or whatever, but people still get convicted from an eyewitness that we've proven are not reliable, that type of thing, right? And that's going to be a hard, that's going to be both of those, but from both sides, it's going to be a hard bridge to gap. And how do we do that? And how do we make sure other entities that are trying to introduce these technologies are aware of that, and we're working collectively on those challenges, right? And I think there's a lot of kind of obvious answers at first of like how you do training and how you implement new things, and how intuitive you make things to work. Like I like to use the example like an iPhone, like you give it to a 5-year-old or an 85-year-old, and they'll figure it out, because it's not the hardware, it's the intuitive, and they've really put so much thought into like how people will interact and what they'll try to do, and you've got to be hyper vigilant about that as well, those type of things.
Yeah, but like you said, even a new tool that's really intuitive and easy to learn, there's still that barrier of trying it and just being willing to accept that there's a different way or methodology here.
I feel like that's probably I feel like you're younger than me. I don't know how old you are. You look younger than me.
I got the.
It's okay. I'm in my mid 40s, and I feel my generation is probably the last of the majority of, because right now this age is probably still majority people resistance to technology. But I feel like our kids have lived with it always changing. Like, like it's like especially these kids with smartphones, like, you know what I mean? They've gone from all of a sudden Facebook's not cool. You know what I mean? Like they're blowing through it. They eat it up. Like in 2 years, you know what I mean? You'll be a nerd if you're using TikTok. Like, oh, you still use that? Like and there's going to be a generation that comes that's been influenced from COVID, and all these things, and finding new ways and different ways to interact, that are just going to embrace it naturally. Like it won't be as hard to sell it. But the problem is you can only go as, you only go as fast as, you can't leave people behind with that. With some of this crucial healthcare, you can't leave people behind. You have to go as slow as the slowest person. That's just the human side of it, right? You have to.
Yeah, and it is always going to be a hybrid approach, right? Like, technology never replaces the doctor in the room, or
right.
It's just another tool in their toolbox to deliver care and to more people, hopefully, and to more efficiently, and so it's more accessible for everyone.
Yeah. There's a company right now that's working on a scanning system that can, of course, they're using celebrities and sports people and stuff right now, that can scan you so detailed. In theory, a doctor could diagnose things on the inside of you, inside the metaverse.
Mm-hmm. So that idea of like the digital twin that
exactly.
Can use, and the doctor basically can cut open the digital twin without cutting you open to look at what's inside.
Right. Now that is a game changer, right? Like that just becomes, you get your health card, and of course, despite I don't want to get, it's in a political conversation, you know what I mean, about your data and who has rights to your body, those type of things. It'll be a whole layer of complication there. But if you ignore all that and just think of the option of, instead of going to the doctor, you send your virtual self in, and you can get 99% of the results. Dude, that's crazy. That's wild. Like, to me, like that's like science fiction movie or something. Like, doesn't even, my brain has a hard time accepting it. But it's so wild.
Yeah, and it also kind of brings up another weird situation where if you can be scanned in so much detail that you have a digital twin that contains almost all the information that it takes to make you, can then is that like immortality, right? Because then you're like you have been can in the future, can you be remade? And it's like, it's like
a digital consciousness. Yeah,
it's like a copy of you, and you can be rebuilt at some point. It's just it's a really interesting kind of ways that you can take that all the way to the nth degree, right?
My wife and I, it's a kind of bit off topic, but it's super related to what you said. But I can't remember what the show was. If I were watching, it was something about I forget, but they could send you, if they got you before you died, you could go on and exist in some digital world, but still with your same consciousness or whatever. And we just had this, just had some silly conversation about, because I'm in VR and stuff like that. I was like, babe, would you ever want like, because I was like, hey, you want me to create like a avatar, like scan myself and create you a VR thing, so in case I ever died, like, you know, would you want that, something you could interact with in a limited way? Her instant reaction was horror. No. like like the lecture, like discuss, like, no, like that would be an abomination. So I just think what you're talking about, having that, you know, could you exist forever in there, you know, that type of thing is just I'd be really keen to hear the different types of reactions people would have to that, you know. And
I think there would be definitely different perspectives on that, because even right now there's, you know, people who have their pets cloned. So, you know, when their pet passes away, then there's a new pet that's exactly the same to replace it. The kids is like, hey, don't worry about Lassie, we've got another one right here. And to me, that's like, oh, it's a little bit weird. Like, you know, the circle of life, like this, just part of living and part of life's lessons. But, you know, if in the digital realm, if, you know, you had that, you know, pet existing in Metaverse, then, you know, maybe that would be kind of cool.
Throw in some haptic
go back
gloves,
and play with, you know, play with the pet you grew up with, even though they're not there anymore. All kinds of things like that. It's not just about, you know, creating an artificial world. It's, you know, translating some of those things in the real world.
Exactly.
Keeping them around, right? It's like another place to store your memories.
Yeah, it's funny, we have some younger people, like some pretty committed gamers and stuff in our mix in our office here, and a couple of them having a big time understanding NFTs and like, why would anyone want like an NFT and stuff? And I joke, because these are the same group of people that go and spend like $3.99 in a microtransaction in whatever game they're playing to buy an outfit, you know, for their character that they're controlling on the screen. Not realizing they just pretty much bought an NFT, except they don't own it. And when they leave that game, they can't put the outfit on their next character from a different game. And you should be able to, you know what I mean? Or you should be able to use it whenever you want in any way, shape, or form. And these are people that are technical. So I kind of have this hunch, you know, like the metaverse is it's going to be a hard sell, you know, especially for stuff that's super personal, like, you know, like healthcare.
So you talked about your experience at Halifax VR and just seeing so many people try it for the first time and their reactions. You know, what would you suggest for someone who's never, you know, tried it before? You know, what's a good kind of introductory experience to see what it's like?
I love doing this. I did this for 3 years for people, because this is exactly what it would be like when people would show up. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're just hoping you can give them some advice. But honestly, I would say, go with something that you genuinely are interested in, that you thought you'd never get to experience. So for me, I've been to the International Space Station, repaired something in and on the space station, and did a spacewalk. I've climbed Mount Everest. I was Batman. I walked a plank off a building, like, and conquered a fear of heights that weirdly transferred to real life.
Wow.
But start with something that excites you, and do it with someone that has some experience with it, that can make a recommendation, right? Because it's like, you know, if you pick up, it's like watching a movie. It's like, you love movies, but if you watch a movie you don't like, you don't stop watching all movies. And VR is like that. So you try an experience, you're like, I didn't like that. Just watch another movie, right? Like, there's another one that's going to get you, that you're gonna like. We had some, like, really, when we had Halifax VR, we had so many tear-jerking moments where we didn't see on the radar, where I'll never forget, we had a lady come in with her elderly mother who was terminally ill and always wanted to go to Australia, and out of desperation reached out and said, could you do something for us? Google Earth is in VR. You can go anywhere in the world and go down to street level and teleport. Some places you can get into museums, but anything that's like, you know, a go-to landmark and stuff, you can get right there. And almost feel like you're there, right? And there's other specific travel things specific to sites. And she brought her mother in, we put the headset on, and we had to do the kind of controls for her and whatnot. And we took her a trip through Australia. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a dry eye in this place. It was, it was just blew my mind. It was just like, wow, like, right. And it's like, how can I not believe in VR? Like I seen that happen. Like, you know what I mean? I experienced that moment where someone felt she lived in the metaverse. She got to go to Australia. And it was just, I'll never forget it. It was so satisfying, like to feel like, I didn't create Google Earth. I didn't create the HTC, but I didn't do any of it besides provide a spot and act as a chachaperone, that type of thing. Yeah. And it was just, it wrecked Sean. Yeah, I got barely honest. I can't even talk about it. I started to tear off. It was just like, wow. And it's like, well, let's recreate that with what we do. And I'm going to have 1,000 of those moments, hopefully, if we can find the right solutions to the problems, right? So that's our high. It's going to be good.
Well, it's really, really inspiring, and there's seems like there's so much potential for new applications for VR in healthcare. So I really appreciate you chatting with me today. Certainly a fun conversation, and awesome. Definitely hope to catch up again.
Go. Stop by the office sometime, man, and we'll turn you into Batman, and I'll give you a good tour through some really fun VR.
I'll take you up on that. I'll bring.
Awesome. I love being an ambassador. I love being an ambassador for the technology. I love it.
Yeah. So if you like this episode, please subscribe to the MindSea newsletter, and you'll be notified about future episodes. Thanks a lot, Daniel, so much for joining us today, and we'll catch you around.
Thanks, Reuben.